everyone, and welcome back to Primetime Crisis Live. It's week 15 of Season 2. I'm your host, Captain Logan, and thanks a lot for tuning in. Tonight, we're working on a bit of a skeleton crew. Manos and Dan were not able to make it, and you got about half of Captain Logan tonight because my voice is not 100% either. So we're going to do our level best to muddle through and make this as fun and interesting for you as humanly possible. Brandon, everybody can see you, buddy.
I know that, but I can't see me. And that's
why is that important?
Because it just is.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, so let's go ahead and introduce our panel tonight. First of all, turn off your lights and shut your windows. It's Steve Baxi.
Hello, everybody.
And lo and behold, it's the Curious Lo.
I'm here in a new apartment that is super echoey.
Yeah, it's like she's broadcasting from the Capitol building. And keeper of the Seventh Circle of Hell, it's Brandon Grimm.
Hi. Apparently I've got new jobs now.
That's right. Yeah, you're gainfully employed while Lucifer is not in hell. Anyway, so tonight, as always, we have a ridiculous amount of shows, insane numbers, and you can see the list of what we're talking about through the poll. So if you want to click on the poll in the description, that'll give you a list of all the episodes that we're talking about, and you can also vote for your favorite there. We brought that back. People seem more interested in doing that than in just telling us what they want us to talk about, and I'm sure that's going to be really predictable how that'll turn out, but it's still there for you if you'd like to vote in the poll anytime during the show. Folks have asked me that are new how the question asking works, so I'll mention it once again. We've got two places that you can chat. One of them is the Blue Chat, where you can chat amongst yourselves and with the panel during the show about whatever you want to, what we're talking about or not, but please leave that idle fun chit chat there, and in the chat for the YouTube live show, that's where we'd like you to ask your questions and leave your comments. Unfortunately, our official chat moderator Jackson Rasco is also not here tonight. Everybody's got other things to do and busy tonight, and
shoot, I forgot.
people, well, look at my wrist. I've got to go.
I know, like, there's nothing there.
And unfortunately, everybody canceled at like the 11th hour. People just suddenly things came up. So we're kind of, like I said, going to run with a skeleton crew, and I'm going to have to keep up with questions myself. So everybody bear with me as we're doing that, and these guys are going to help me out a little bit with questions as well. But anyway, anytime during the show, you can leave questions and comments that you just the ones that you want to hear us talk about on the show on the live stream in the comments there, and we'll be looking at that throughout. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started right away. We're going to go round robin and let you know what each of our favorite episodes were for the week, and then we'll start getting right in on the conversation for all the TV that came out last week. And we're also adding Walking Dead to the list this week for the Curious Lo. So if you have any questions about Walking Dead, feel free to ask them. Keep in mind that you won't generate a full-on discussion amongst us because the rest of us didn't watch it, but Lo was caught up. I may eventually finally watch that show and catch up on it, but 6 seasons and another show. Lo, are you gonna do Fear the Walking Dead as well?
I plan on it. I haven't seen it yet. It came out like last summer, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I want to.
Okay. So was that because I'm not familiar with it? Was that like a short show that the first season is already over, or?
Yeah. I think it only had 6 episodes. Don't quote me on that. I know it was a pretty short season, but they are planning on doing a season 2 this year.
Oh, okay, cool. Lo, I'm laughing at your comments in the chat.
Oh.
Anyway, see, I'm not usually looking at the chat. I usually have somebody else to do that for me, so this is a totally different experience right now. Because I wasn't scatterbrained enough. All right, let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's start with Steve Baxi. Steve, what was your favorite episode of all the things that you watched last weekend? Talk to us about it a little bit.
Okay, so the easy answer is Agent Carter and iZombie, and we'll get to iZombie because I thought this episode was probably the best they had all season. But just for the sake of variety, I want to say The Flash. I really, really loved the Flash this week. I don't know why, but like it was just so much fun, and I got really into the mystery with who Zoom is and the stuff with Jay Garrick, and I don't know, it felt like a really fun, silly, over-the-top action show, and I hadn't got that much energy out of it in so long. It felt like season 1's first 2 episodes all over again.
Did you not have that experience with it last week?
No, that last week was just okay. This is better.
Oh wow, really? Because I
I
totally
enjoyed
disagreed.
last week, but this was like a different kind of jumping up in quality.
Really? I
thought so.
have a total flip from you on that, honestly.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
I mean, I thought it was good. I thought it was a good follow up. I think together it's one solid episode. But I thought last week's was just a smidge more fun.
Weird. I mean, I had fun last week. I enjoyed it. I just thought this week was just, I don't know. I guess the stuff with Zoom mostly got me. I thought he was fantastic.
I'm with you there. I'm telling you, man, I want so badly for him to take off his helmet and actually have Tony Todd there. Like, I really want live action Tony Todd.
He's older, more aggressive Wally West. That's what'll happen.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk some more about that show a little bit later. Lo, what was the best thing you watched this week? She's gonna say.
I was gonna say Flash too. I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
There we go.
I thought it was great. I was having so much fun. I think I'm gonna say iZombie though, at the risk of surprising everybody because I love The Walking Dead. But yeah, iZombie. I loved just everything about this episode. I'm so glad that Clive saw that her personality switches every single week, finally. It's been a long time coming, so hopefully that means he'll be in the loop as far as her zombiness goes eventually. I loved the ending with their use of Les Miserables because I loved that musical, so that was pretty cool, even though that's a very surface reason to like an episode. But yeah, it's cool. They're making a lot of headway in the overall plot, so it's cool. I'm excited to see where we're going from here.
Brandon, between the two shows you watched, what was your favorite thing
It's
this
going
last
to be
week?
X-Files, and I knew as soon as I saw X-Files it was going to be X-Files no matter how I like Lucifer. I really dug the whole working with the placebo thing in this episode. It was a twist for me. It threw me, and I just enjoyed it overall. And the one thing I didn't like, I liked the message it was sending in the end, but at the beginning, I didn't want them to do what they did with the foreign-looking guys. I didn't want them to go there, but they did. So that's my main complaint. But overall, I really enjoyed it.
Well, that'll be fun later when we get there. This week's tough for me. I would have probably picked Flash or iZombie, and I mean, like, you know, I always go last, so even like you guys don't get too excited. You're not ganging up on me on Flash. I loved it also. I just thought I wouldn't put it above last week. I think they were right there. But of what's left, I'd have to say either Agent Carter or yeah, probably Agent Carter, which is you know, not fair because we had 2 episodes. Why did we have 2 episodes of that show this week? I have no idea why that happened, but anyway, I'm really sucked into that story now, and had just been enjoying it and looking forward to seeing where we would go character development wise with Agent Carter and the background stuff before, but now I'm getting so into the pseudoscience and the science fiction side of it, which has been there all along, but now we're really doing some cool character stuff with it. I love all the parallels between Madame Mask and everybody else. It's really neat how she's using that to manipulate and toy with people. Where she'll and with the whole like mask thing, I'm wondering if that's not gonna become kind of a metaphor thing for her, or kind of a trait for her moving forward, where she's able to find what she has in common with anybody and use that to their disadvantage. I like all the stuff about how she and Dottie have things in common because they were both kind of conditioned as children, and which is so weird and interesting, comparing this Soviet upbringing to being a child starlet and being an actress and stuff. So you're basically comparing Hollywood to Soviet Russia, and that's kind of the implications of that are kind of scary. But yet, I really like that she's like, I mean, we have this thing in common, but I'm still obviously way better than you. and way more powerful than you, and her whole. She's a really frightening villain. I'm really impressed with how the show is taken two female villains with both of these seasons and made them both really interesting, layered, and scary. And she's as scary as anybody, or a lot more scary, I think, and more interesting than most of the villains we've had in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I have some things in common with them now that I'm thinking about it, but I won't get real into that. The gimmick of the thing on her face getting bigger and bigger as she kills people is fun, because you just keep anticipating it getting worse and worse to the point where she can't even hide it anymore. And but she likes that power, and she's going to get to a point where she doesn't care about that. But I don't know. There's a whole lot of other things I can say. I'm also really impressed with how they're now blending the comedy with the drama, because I was starting to think, especially with Jarvis being the comic relief so hard this season. He was some last season, but this season especially. I mean, he's it's so slapstick comedy, and I was worried that was becoming a problem. And then, especially with the end of this last episode with his wife getting shot and stuff, they're really reining that in and using it to subvert expectations as opposed to just waste time. I was afraid they didn't have enough to do this season, and that they were just kind of wasting time with that stuff. And now it was to throw us for a loop, and they got me with it. The love triangle thing is still up in the air for me, but it's better than most of your TV love triangles. So I'm appreciating it more than I usually do. So that's everybody's favorite episode for this week. We'll go ahead and start going to the questions and find out what people most would like us to talk about. And like I said, Steve and Lo, help me out throughout the show. Feel free to throw out something when you see something interesting that you want to talk about. Let's start with iZombie.
I have one. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
No,
we'll do this. Yeah, Ultron 30 wasn't able to make it to the show, so he left his early, so I thought we'd start with it. And by the way, folks, that's always cool. Feel free to leave your questions and comments in the chat before the show starts if you can't make it, or even if you can, and we're more likely to see it that way too. So that's totally cool. iZombie, what do you think of Clive finally realizing Liv taking on the personalities of the victims? Lo mentioned that, and that's the thing I wanted to bring up too. I'm really glad it finally happened. It's glaring because it took this long, and I've talked about it at length. That's been my one big problem with this show, and I do think that it's a little awkward that it didn't come up when they were at odds with each other. Like, why didn't he bring it up when she was pretending to be a superhero and going out and being a vigilante? That's almost impossible to believe. I also was, and I'm not saying that because I said it on the show, this is why they wrote it in. I'm not saying that, but I did think it was kind of odd that he put it almost verbatim the way I keep talking about it. And I just thought that was really funny, and it makes me wonder if they haven't heard some fan complaints about it, just from the community at large, and decided to finally put something in there. Like we've seen Arrow and Flash do over and over and over again, where it's like, oh, how are people eating in this makeshift prison we have? Somebody brings food down one time, and now we're good. That's not a great example, because there's other things with the prison, though, where it's like, oh, that seems sort of immoral. Maybe someone should mention that, So this felt like one of those things, but I am glad we're finally addressing it, and hope that it actually is setting up more stuff with his, like Lo said. I hope that that's the beginnings of his catching on to the zombie thing. But I see it being maybe another, not end of the season, beginning of next season before that happens.
The whole Clive knowing is sort of a double-edged sword, though, right? Because if you had it introduced where he just figured it out, then you throw Clive under the bus and make him an idiot. And you do what you did in this episode, which is he knows all along, and you have the problem of why didn't he bring it up earlier? So no matter what they did, they were going to be a little screwed on that. This episode was written by Rob Thomas, who is the showrunner, and I think partly why he wrote this episode is because he was trying to get all those story points out as quickly as possible. And so you get the Clive thing, you get the stuff with the drugs that they were looking for. It felt like they were trying to push the season along a lot faster in this one particular episode than they have previously, which I thought worked overall. The big thing that stuck out for me as far as Clive and finding out, though, is Does he take her as a liability now? Like, is he going to talk about that anymore? Like, are they going to go and find a victim that is crazy? Or like, if let's just assume that there's a killer that killed another killer, and Liv takes that in mind. Would Clive want to like bench her for that? Would he start using that as a way to talk to her differently going forward, or not? Like, it feels like it has to change their dynamic a little bit if he's going to acknowledge that.
I think as long as it does, it's interesting. You know, like, I think what you're talking about is only a criticism if they don't think about that stuff. Like, wouldn't it be really interesting to have an episode where the character trait would be too extreme, and he says, "No, I don't want you around on this," but of course she's eaten the brain already.
Yeah, and I mean, the superhero thing was the first one, but like, if they find another brain like that where she's actively going against what he's trying to do, and he would have to talk to her, or at least. I don't know why he hasn't confronted her directly about that. At least
I don't either. Has she? That's a good point. Although I don't know that there was a lot of a opportunity in this episode. You know,
not in this episode, but just like retroactively, like we said earlier.
Yeah, but like you said, it was going to be handled by doing it. It was a problem because it had never been dealt with before. And it makes you wonder if he wasn't a little bit frustrated, thinking, okay, here's a thing that nobody's dealt with yet, and now that I've got a script, I can. But then. You know, he's show running a show, so there's no reason he couldn't have told somebody to put that in there someplace.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Sure, in a writing room that happened, but the dialogue and the banter this episode was so spot on.
Yes.
And it just goes to show how good of a writing team this is, where it's been as clever and creative and nuanced a lot of the time as it has, and then he comes in and steps it up even another notch, and you realize just how good it is already. Because I wouldn't have thought there was anywhere to go but down.
Clive and his father, those scenes were just magnificent. I loved everything about those.
Oh my goodness.
You mean
the makeup in that scene with him like waking his dad up and
that was amazing. He's like, the zombie apocalypse, you missed it.
He's like, the floods of this year, and then this, like all these different like super like cliche end of the world things.
Yeah, it was like Batman Beyond, the near apocalypse of 2009.
Yeah. Oh, so great.
Yep, that joke was fantastic. I wish they did more with that.
Starting of the song too, because he had it playing in the background, and then it led into them finding the bodies.
I was surprised how well that worked. Like that's a very intense song. It's a very loud song, and yet everything just worked perfectly for that.
I kept expecting them to cut it off, and I was like, it's just going like through to the end of the song. This is crazy.
Yeah, I love that. It was great.
Well, if we're done with this, I have another question.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure.
So this is DC Marvel fan guy. So question for the panel: do you think Snart talking to Sara about not being a killer anymore and how one can change was more about himself unconsciously wanting to somehow change and seeing himself? I don't think so.
I don't think so either, yeah.
I think part of what makes Snart one of the characters that I really like on this show is the fact that he's just like unapologetically himself and doesn't care. But I do think it's interesting that he would kind of want to make Sara feel better, because that's sort of out of character for him.
Cap and I were talking about this on Facebook. It brings up a problem I've had with Snart all the way through, which is his honor code doesn't make any sense. He just keeps saying he has an honor code. It doesn't actually line up with anything. Like, one of the issues is he doesn't want Sara to kill Stein, or at least he's trying to make her feel bad about it. He's got this whole thing of, I don't turn my back on my team, yet he's prioritizing Heatwave over Ray for reasons. He's got this whole thing where if you're on my team, I stick up for you, but then also I don't know how he's defining team, because he seems to jump between sometimes their means and sometimes their ends really, really randomly. Like, the honor code just comes up as random dialogue to make him sound more noble than he is, and the system itself that he's describing doesn't have any consistency.
Yeah, and it makes it hard to respect him as much as you want to, because he will detest other characters for having no sort of moral code, but then I don't understand his, and I'm not convinced that he really has one the way he's talking about it. And I mean, like, one of those things where I'm afraid that it would be even more of a problem in Legends if I were to go back and rewatch all of his Flash episodes, because there's bits here and there in his episodes there where I kind of question it also, and I think that it might be sort of a house of cards that's fallen apart to a degree. Because Steve, you and I were talking about this on Facebook. There's that, and I forget which episode it is, but isn't there a thing where he promises something to Barry, and then at the end of the episode, he totally goes back on it, and it's kind of really awful. And Barry's like, but I thought you were a man of your word, and he's like, well, you forget I'm a crook, and that seemed to definitively tell us he has no honor code.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing,
touting that up in Legends.
And then even in this season, like in the show, he has this whole thing where I don't hurt civilians, but he selfishly endangers the entire time stream to get something he wants. The rest of the universe isn't a civilian?
Yeah, to be fair, though, part of that is the show being really sloppy with the way it handles time travel and the way people think about time travel, because it makes too much of a joke out of that too often, where I don't want to blame that on the characters themselves as people before I blame it on the show.
That's fair, but he's warned about it, though, right? That's my issue with it, is that someone warns him, if you do this, you're endangering people, and he actively doesn't care about that.
No, that's true, but we've had that. I'm just saying with the whole messing up the timeline thing, it seems like nobody is learning their lesson about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like we keep playing this as like a band of misfits that's gonna do whatever they want no matter what, and even though they keep potentially messing up the time stream, though they keep making that mistake over and over again because we need conflict, and being back in time it's easy to manufacture that conflict by creating situations that would mess up the timeline. But then the problem is you can do that without throwing your characters under the bus and constantly regressing them or starting over and over again. Having said that, just real quick, I want to mention because we've been talking so negatively about Legends, and we've been getting some irritation from people about that. This particular episode I really overall liked a lot compared to the rest of it. I think for this show, it's its best episode, and is pretty decent for the standards that this whole continuity has been setting lately. I thought everybody was a lot more, besides the stuff you're saying with Snart, which I totally agree with you. And Steve and I were arguing about this while I was watching the episode. I should have waited to say anything to him until I finished it, because I was like, Steve, I'm 20 minutes into Legends, and it's pretty good. And he's like, wait till you get in the end. And I was like, oh. And then I sort of right. But overall, I thought that people were being a lot more understanding and reasonable and acting more like real people. How am I suddenly, and I shouldn't say suddenly, for this show I have been a lot more than I was before, but how is it that Palmer is legitimately an okay character now? Like, I kind of like him.
Yeah, he's all right.
I love him. Between him and Snart, I think they're both really great characters that I have been kind of latching onto because I'm very frustrated at Sara mostly.
Oh, well, do tell, because I liked her and Hunter's dynamic a lot this episode.
I don't know. I mean, I've never really been a big fan of hers. Sorry to disappoint. I'm only like halfway through Arrow at the moment, so maybe she'll redeem herself for me in the second half of season 3. I'm in the middle of season 3.
Oh,
so at my current point in time, she's dead.
No, you've seen all the reasons I like her, so
I don't know what it is. I can't put a pin in it as far as what really bothers me about her. So
you're like, I don't know what it is about her that you like so much, Captain Logan.
No. I don't know what it is that makes me not like her. I can see why people would like her.
Yeah, you spend money on this character. I don't understand.
But no, I really like everything that's been happening with Roy. I'm sorry, I'm echoing a little bit.
Oh, it is Ray.
No, yeah, Ray.
It is Ray.
I'm echoing a little bit on your end. It's
I'm sorry.
Messing me up.
that
sorry, Ray. I really have been liking him in this show too. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. I agree.
He went from being really annoying, arrogant, he wishes he was Tony Stark, to being Superman-y. Like, he feels like he's just playing Superman now. Like, with the scene after he gets the crap kicked out of him, he looked a lot like Christopher Reeve from Superman 2 after he got beat up in the diner.
I didn't even think of that.
Always when he was cast as Superman, like he had moments where he looked a lot like Christopher Reeve, and he had that a little bit in this episode.
And then I think that's how he should have been characterized all along. I mean, obviously, that's not how he would. I mean, the reason he's in this show is because he was a certain way and nobody cared anything about him. So he wouldn't be here probably, but I still think that we should have just characterized him that way in Arrow. Now,
to be fair though, they were going for Blue Beetle Ted Kord first, and then they had to change it like halfway through.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, they probably wrote him as a jerk to be Ted Kordy to begin with, and then just couldn't change it in time or something.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and I mean, I don't want to get back into reviewing season 3, but you remember it was always really weird because you start off with that character and you think you know what he's doing, and you think that he's like kind of a master manipulator, and he's pretending he's not, and then it turns out that he's not that at all, but that he does all these terrible things to people, and I didn't understand what in the world we were doing with him. But he's had quite the transformation. Like of everybody in this show, he's the one who is most different from the way he used to be, who has the most clear and natural transformation, evolution, and is one of the most likable. Which I'm really surprised that I'm saying, and I get him, I understand him. Sara, I've gone back and forth on, and I actually like her a lot more now this episode than I had before. I really like the way Steve Hunter is playing her kind of as his first officer, like second in command.
Yeah, I agree. I'm enjoying that too.
And
I hope they get more screen time together, because I also think just those two actors together, they have a really fun dynamic.
I keep wondering if there's not going to be a romance there.
Maybe.
It's a little bit, except that obviously these are very different characters, and they both have this kind of ends justifies the means philosophy, but they remind me a little bit of like Janeway Chakotay in Star Trek Voyager, where you're just wondering if they might ever have a romance, and in a way I sort of hope they won't, but it's just a thing that where I sort of wonder if they might.
I wouldn't want them to, primarily because Rip's whole motivation is that his wife and child died, so I wouldn't exactly like.
And then you end up with the Caitlin problem.
Yeah, exactly, the Caitlin problem.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good point. The other thing I really liked with Hunter was this idea, and in what he's doing with Sara and some other characters in Stein, this idea that or this question of, is he all that much better than Savage because they both have similar ways of doing things, even though his heart is more in the right place. But then is it really about fixing the timeline, or is it more just a revenge thing?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I thought that they handled that pretty well. But I don't know, there was a lot to like this episode. And Steve, the reason I liked it so much was I just thought that it was more dense and they got a lot more done, and it was a really well-paced, kind of packed-in episode where you kept complaining that this show has been just kind of about sitting around witty banter, and this episode was much more about actually telling a story, I thought.
Yeah, this is a substantial improvement over the first 3 episodes, and I'll definitely give you that. Like, there is a legitimate story here. There's legitimate character arcs for the characters. My issue with it, though, is just like a lot of it still feels kind of generic to me. Like, Stein still doesn't come alive at all for me. Stein, when you get to
hey, Cap, we're getting really bad echo from your end.
There is not a lot I can do about it, unfortunately.
Is there a way that when we're talking, you just mute your microphone? Because you'll still be able to hear us? Because I think that would stop the echo from your end, and then just unmute it when you're ready to talk. I don't know if that'll work or not. Seems like it's working. Okay, continue,
Steve. It looks like it's working. All right. I was just gonna say, the thing with Stein, though, Stein has near the very end of the episode, he has this line to the Firestorm chick where he says that I was fascinated with your culture, and he proceeds to list things that anyone who took a high school English class would know. Like, it was just the most generic exchange of Russian interest I've ever heard, and then the whole episode just had like the most generic Cold War Russian vibe I thought that I thought the show could go for, and it just, I don't know, it didn't feel genuine in a lot of ways, but it was still trying to tell a story, and I like the idea in principle of Stein being interested by Russian culture and by Marxism, even if he doesn't understand what any of those things mean. In principle, I think it was still interesting. And the Firestorm stuff by the end is still really cool, and the action actually really works by the end, which is the problem I had with the previous episodes where the action just was boring me, and this time around I actually had fun watching it.
I don't know, Steve. Like maybe I've just become kind of accustomed to the level of storytelling these shows tend to go for, so I'm not expecting the sort of sophistication that I was early on in Arrow and that I wish I still could have now. But
That's fair.
I still. But I'm not sure I'm with you on the thing with Stein, and I wasn't seeing as much generic as you. I felt that way with both the 70s and the 80s stuff before we went to Russia. Like when you say generic as far as like Cold War plot, I mean like what more do you want? Like it's
well, I mean, okay.
It is Cold War. It's about
part of the problem,
nuclear stuff and Firestorm.
Is a lot like Flash, where like the rogues are there, but they don't actually, or the villains are there, and they don't like mean or stand for anything. The Cold War setting is here, and there's a plot that revolves around Cold War weapons. You could have told the story anywhere in any other time period. The only thing Stein really knows about Russian culture is Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, which everyone knows, and it doesn't really mean anything. Doesn't really add anything to his progress as a character. It doesn't really build to anything aside from this is a cool setting, and I just wish it was more than that. Like it's really generic in the sense that look, we're in the Cold War, but so what?
I guess just right now I'll take like actually trying to tell a story and not just joking constantly and having characters being in character is exciting to me.
That's fair.
Like
I said, it is a substantial improvement.
Stein, I was really kind of more with this episode. I mean, I liked how courageous he was trying to be in refusing to say anything, not giving anything away that they were trying to get from him. I mean, it does do that typical like we've taken your friends and we're going to hurt them, and so now he has to. But I liked how far he went before he finally did. I appreciated that. I just don't know, Steve. I mean, I won't argue with you on this any further, but I'm not sure that I agree with you that the thing with Stein talking about Russian stuff was supposed to be anything but him trying to win her over. Like, and just kind of trying to BS his way out of a situation.
The actor sold it. I thought he actually had an actual passion for the material. He just wasn't given any good dialogue to go with it.
Well, maybe he was trying to be really passionate to win her over, but he's not a history person as much as he is a scientist, so maybe he just doesn't know that much, and he's just selling what he does have really well.
That's possible. I don't know. I felt like he actually had that interest in him, and they just didn't develop it much.
Okay, I didn't even think of that.
Like I don't know. It sounds like it would fit, right? Like he is of that age. We saw it in the 70s episode. We see how reckless he is. The whole idea of Firestorm as a chemical weapon and as something that is a progression of something like the atomic bomb. I don't know. I think like inherently those ideas could be there with his character.
I'll give you, as far as generic stuff goes, so Firestorm is important to the Russians because it can make you turn into a fiery person and fly around, and like that's a more powerful, more devastating weapon than blowing up things with nukes, because why? Like you see the future and it's just a whole bunch of people that look like Firestorm flying around, devastating things, and yeah, that is certainly a really powerful weapon, but I have a hard time buying that you couldn't fight that better than you could fight, a singular nuclear event. Like,
they just don't use Firestorm's powers from the comics effectively, which is the issue. They never go into any more depth than he shoots fire. And in the comics, he's got some of the most interesting and most dangerous powers possible.
Yeah, they haven't really dealt that much with like transmuting matter and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his tagline is Firestorm the Nuclear Man, right? Like there's lots of interesting stuff you could do with that. And in the comics, he makes like whole weapons out of things. He can change the radiation he has to create kryptonite to attack Superman. Like he's got a really strong range of powers that no one uses.
Well, let's move on. We've got lots of other shows to talk about. Let's go. I liked that episode better than I have been, but I might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit.
I liked it a lot too. I just don't really know anything about Russian culture to be in that conversation. But no, I liked it a lot. I agree with you, Cap.
Lo and I enjoy the same flavor of Kool-Aid. Let's move on to let's see. Let's talk a little bit about Flash. Keith Hastings asks, who do you think the man in the iron mask is on Flash? Which is a question I did not think we would be still asking this week. I really thought that they were going to give that away and tell it to us. I got a message from a friend of mine the other day that was freaking out about a reference that I was not familiar with, and I hadn't watched the episode yet, so he was just losing his mind about this. And I was like, okay, well, I've never heard of that, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. I watched the whole episode, and I still have no idea what he was talking about. He said something about a Golden Age Flash villain called the Rival, who was apparently the first, like, reversed Flash before we had the reverse Flash or Zoom, and I don't know where the reference was, but I'm assuming that the man in the mask has something to do with that.
That's possible.
But I don't know what he's talking about. But my friend acted like it was this big Easter egg, and he was like, "Good job, Jeff Johns." And I was like, "I don't know what we're talking about right now. Like, I didn't see that happen." But he's saying something about Jay Garrick, and it made me question if the Jay Garrick we've been dealing with this whole time is actually Jay Garrick.
That's a good question. Well, the Rival in the comics is basically Jay Garrick, but like he's got like negative colors instead of the regular Jay Garrick colors. Like it's the exact same costume, it's the exact same form, it's the exact same build, except it's like purple and black. So it could be possible that the Jay Garrick we're seeing right now is actually the Rival in disguise or something like that. Maybe that's what your friend means, but I'm not sure.
That's what I started wondering, and I would have wondered it even if it hadn't been for him mentioning the Rival, because it seemed really suspicious to me that he's, tapping out Jay. And by the way, I thought that whole thing not actually being Morse code and being something else was really cool.
Yeah, me too.
And I liked that. The girl was what's her name, Jessie, was smart enough to realize that he wasn't going past 5. Of course, she had a lot of time on her hands to notice that.
I don't understand why he didn't just like make a J and then an A. They can see him. There is no point to him tapping this out. If there was some sort of like visual thing that they could only just barely, like, they couldn't see him, it would make sense. But I was just like, what is happening here?
But his hands don't go up that high, aren't they trapped? Like he can only move like this?
No, he's the only one that was chained to anything.
Oh.
And even if they were trapped, if he can reach high enough to tap, he could still do.
It was really cool that they did the thing. It's not a big deal, but it was just made me laugh.
I love how you guys were freaking out about how wonderful this episode is, and then you're criticizing a thing that I did not even think of.
I really loved this episode. I was so excited about Caitlin and everything. Like, it was awesome, but yeah, it made me laugh that they see each other.
So it's gonna be either that guy's the real Jay Garrick, or he's like this other Jay Garrick. And if he's a character, as I would assume, obscure to most people, even modern Flash fans, I would assume that's a weird thing to wait that long to come out and tell us, right? Like you get this whole big 2-parter, and you're kind of waiting to find out about. Like, they used that as the big cliffhanger. And I don't mean cliffhanger in the sense that they necessarily were going to tell us next episode, but I sure thought we had reason to think that we'd find out. And I'm not upset that we didn't necessarily, but it is going to seem like something of a letdown if we go episodes and episodes. We finally find out who he is, and he's nobody we've ever heard of, and not even a real big comic reference for your average viewer, in the last couple generations, because the Rival is a 40s, 50s era character that wasn't used much after that.
I mean, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to make it this big, like, I don't know anything about the Rival, but if it is a character that has maybe an interesting plot line, it couldn't be that they're trying to make some sort of like, ooh, look what character we're using. Like, who cared about Guardians of the Galaxy before they were like, hey, we're going to bring them into the mainstream? It could just be that they want to explore that character.
Sure, the Rival thing could still only be speculation, because remember Jay's alleged Earth 1 doppelganger is Hunter Zolomon. So maybe he's just Hunter Zolomon.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I couldn't remember what his doppelganger's name was.
Yeah, but and I get why you're saying that, Lo. But in a comic book thing, in a superhero comic thing that is borrowing so much of its format even from comics, I'm just saying that usually that's a big reveal of a thing that either we've heard of already or is really really going to matter to us. And it being in another universe and someone we've never heard of in any capacity, be it in universe or in comics, will somewhat surprise me. Is all I'm saying, because I feel like they were. That's one of those reveals when they showed you the helmet, where I felt like they were asking you to guess, as opposed to you're going to be really excited to see where the story goes. I thought we were being asked to guess.
True.
Yeah, that's fair.
But anyway, that's all I want to say about that. The Caitlyn thing was remarkably well handled.
I loved Caitlyn. Like she's usually my least favorite character on this show because she is useless and never does anything. And but her in Earth 2 is great. I loved, of course, like Cisco being like, no, the Caitlyn that I know is like really caring, and she would be just devastated if she lost somebody. And she was. I've seen what it did to her, and to get through to her that way was interesting and cool and actually character building. I liked it.
It's enough to make you wish that they would take her at some point, kill off the Caitlyn in our universe and bring her over and just have her and still be in that costume and that whole crazy getup.
Yeah. Blue lips. I'm all about it.
I love the sense of adventure in this episode, but if you're gonna do a thing like we've got this huge mountain we've got to traverse, and I'm going to do ice handholds, you can't have a cut and they're just up there.
I was freaking out on Twitter about Earth 2 Barry, just because he is exactly like Gabe. And the moment when he said, but I'm wearing wingtips, I was just like, Gabe, it's you. You literally... He's not wearing them right now, but he wears wingtips to work like every day, and there were like all these funny things, but I loved that line. It made me laugh.
I like Earth 2 Barry a lot, too. He's a lot of fun, and it's a good contrast to the regular Barry. The only issue I have with it is Earth 1 Barry is already really kind of useless and reactionary, so when Earth 2 Barry inspires him, I see it more as Earth 2 Barry is awesome, and Earth 1 Barry has just been stagnant for 2 years.
Yeah, I've got the same thing. But it is fun that they subvert your expectations with that, because he's so nerdy and antisocial, and then you see that he's really super capable, and I didn't think they would make him even that complex.
Well, and it makes sense, especially with Iris.
It makes sense that he is with Iris on this Earth because he's more capable and more of a go-getter.
Why didn't they make us buy that? And then they did.
I know.
Well, and then also just Earth 2 is just so much more interesting than Earth 1 because everyone accepts metahumans. Everyone's got an alarm whenever they go off. It's a place that looks like it's constantly under attack. Barry's got a father-in-law that doesn't like him. He's got a wife that's a police officer and is really, really aggressive. And they've been dealing with Zoom for the past year. Like, he's a very, very timid guy that has all the reason in the world to be as scared and shy as he is, but he still kind of steps up by the end, and I bought all of that. It was really surprising. I think that's probably why I enjoyed this episode so much.
Okay, boy, I just wish we had 6 hours to talk about every show in the we'd like to. There's just too much on right now. And I gotta say, making it tougher and tougher for me to keep up with everything and get my thoughts together about stuff. I really wish we had the time of the week. This would have to be the only thing we did, and even then, I don't know that we'd get it all done. Let's move on to some other things. Folks were asking us to talk about Arrow and other things. Let's go ahead and just briefly talk X-Files a bit. I'm not seeing any direct questions besides just talk about X-Files, and I want to make sure that we get to that because I know there's going to be a little bit of some battling Jack Murdoch. So we heard Brandon kind of give us his initial thoughts on what he thought of that episode. Steve told me earlier he loathed it. Steve, what was your biggest issue with it, and then we'll talk about it a bit.
Okay. So my issues are twofold. I'm still hearing an echo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there we go. Okay. My issues are twofold. The first one is, and this is a thing that X-Files has always had, and I was tweeting about this, and Comics Kid sent me a couple tweets back, and he basically confirmed exactly what I was thinking of. The X-Files have this thing where Mulder can just say random asinine nonsense, and it's okay, because by the end of the episode, he's somehow right. And that whole conversation he has with Einstein, which is it's a good joke, by the way, Agent Einstein, I think that was funny. But that whole conversation he has with Einstein, when he's talking about the weight of ideas, he is interchangeably using two different definitions of ideas. I've been in debates about mind-body problems and about the weight of ideas and stuff. What he said made absolutely no sense. Like, line to line, what he was saying made absolutely no sense. This is a lot like The Matrix throughout the whole episode, where they were just saying random platitudes, but if you're actually trying to think about what the show is trying to discuss, it's not saying anything. It's just really bizarre random nonsense and random catchwords. It doesn't really gel or make any point at all, especially when you get to the end and they start talking about like God and stuff, and it just doesn't flow, it doesn't make any kind of sense, and it just feels like they're trying to be smarter than they are. And then the other thing is a problem that I have with 24, and this show does the same thing. You open a show with a Muslim character, he's fine, he's humanized, we see a day in his life, you do a thing where he experiences racism because he lives in Texas and stuff like that, you make us like feel for him and get a sense of who he is, and then you confirm the racist fears of it. So you say, on the one hand, let's feel bad for him because people are stereotyping him. Then let's confirm the stereotype. You can't do that. That's really, really irritating, and that just makes me feel like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too about it. 24 does it all the time. It makes me just as angry as there as it does right here. I don't know. I thought this episode was just awful.
Well, not to get too political about it, and I want to talk more about your first thing, but I'll weigh in on the Muslim thing for a second and just say that I think that if you're more thoughtful about it, you can kind of maybe get away with that because the situation is just more complex. So I do appreciate I always appreciate having a person that does a horrible thing or being the bad guy that is more complex than just being the bad guy, and that you and that you live with them for a minute and you kind of see that they're a normal person too, but then they have this, but then they've been, because the idea, especially here, is that you've been. You are a regular person, but then you've been manipulated to become an extremist. So so you're taking somebody that is just a person and then doing that to them. But the problem is the episode is also trying to talk about a really major hot button issue right now that is really volatile and people are very, very extremely opinionated about. And I don't know if I would have done that teaser for an episode that wants to talk about it the way this one is trying to.
Yeah, especially when you talk about the philosophical issues. Like, you open up with an important hot-button political issue, and then you proceed to have, or attempt to have, intelligent discourse about faith and ideas, and then you completely botch how you're discussing those ideas. And it doesn't jive for me at all when you do that. You can, if you were trying to make a point that was more coherent, I could maybe give it credit just because it's understanding the point it wants to make, but I don't think this episode understands what was written on the page. Like, it feels like line to line this episode doesn't know what it wants to be or what it wants to try and talk about.
Boy, that was my instinct too, with especially that bit of it, where I just couldn't decide what they were saying about the about the whole Muslim terrorist issue, because they were trying to show. It seems like they were trying to show you the side of it too of people who just that's their faith and they just practice it, and they're just regular people. But I'm not sure what they were saying with that. I don't know if they were saying anything about the faith itself, or I feel like to read it all is reading too far into it.
Yeah, and then you can't have lines like experiences where someone touches the face of God and stuff. Like, you can't get expressly theological when your theological points aren't built on anything.
Well, here's my take on this. I'm going to say that, first of all, I was disappointed that they went the full 9 yards with the Muslim guys. I thought what they were going to do, I had hoped what they were going to do, was use that as kind of like a red herring, if you will. And something else was going to happen, but they were targeting them in an investigation when, in fact, it wasn't them. I hoped that's where they were going. In the end, we got these guys, and as it turns out at the very end, the one guy was remorseful, didn't want to go through with it all the way, yada, yada, yada. But I think, to your point, Steve, about how Mulder's kind of saying two different ideas in the same thing. Mulder doesn't get taken seriously a lot of the time by a lot of people, especially in the Bureau, right? This is why, is because he does stuff like this. I think it's totally in his character to be saying things back and forth like this. Maybe they're two separate ideas and line by line he's going back and forth. I think that's what his character has been for a long time, and I think they're just playing into that more. But on the subject of what happens in the episode, like the placebo effect, they said a lot about the placebo
Well, don't
effect.
take us there yet.
Well,
because hold on, let's get there in a second.
Okay.
Because I don't want to get too far away from that because I want to weigh in on that.
Well, that's fine. I was going to go back, but it touched a little bit on what I was still saying. But if you
go ahead. That's fine.
Well, okay. So Mulder even suggests the idea because first of all, I dug the Einstein joke too, or the fact that her name was Einstein was hilarious, and it reminded me a little bit of. It was supposed to be kind of a younger them. I felt like a younger Scully and Mulder, just in a different way. And I think if Mulder doesn't believe in part anything that he's going to be talking about, he won't necessarily talk about it. But he's trying to impart on her before it ever even happens that there could be a link to get inside somehow. He's somewhat sold on the issue. He has his mind open to the idea that this could happen. He is thinking that it could happen, not sure it will happen.
See, the way that scene plays it is it plays it like, I think, Steve, the nonsense it feels to us like it is. And then you find out that he actually buys it.
Yeah, that's my issue with
trying to convince, I couldn't believe that. Like,
yeah, that's my issue with it. It's one thing to play on Mulder saying random nonsense and people don't take him seriously. That's cool, that's fine, that's whatever. But then he can't be proven right every single time he does it. And that's the thing X-Files always does, is where he can have random doublespeak that makes no sense, but by the end of the episode he did something right, because he's the star of the show.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, Brandon, there have to be consequences for that. It can't just be he just says whatever and he really is a crackpot, except for when we don't want him to be a crackpot. Like the problem is again, first episode of the season, I really liked the idea of the difference between wanting to believe and actually believing, and I thought that there was some that there was some sophistication and some soberness in Mulder with that idea. And then you get to this, and it seems to completely contradict that. Where he's he sees enough evidence because he doesn't need as much as a lot of people, but part of that's because of what he's seen, right? I mean, even Scully doesn't need as much evidence as she used to because she's seen a lot and she knows that a lot of supernatural things are possible at this point. So because we have to be careful not to make her dense. So the deal with Mulder and his crazy theories and stuff is that you have to buy that there's enough at least circumstantial evidence that would bring him to that, and that he's not just buying whatever BS randomness is on the internet. And here, I felt like he was either grasping at straws or making stuff up on purpose because he was testing her in some way. And when it turned out that it wasn't that, and then the placebo thing, which I didn't even remotely buy, I didn't understand what in the world we were even doing with that. It seemed really weird and counterintuitive, and I don't think this is me just wishing it went a certain way and it didn't. It really felt like it was building to a thing where Mulder gets the opposite side of his archetype and is trying to show her his world, and Scully's doing the same thing with the opposite archetype of her archetype, and then we don't really do anything with that. Like we paired them up just because gimmick, I guess, and didn't really do very much with that. And then when it turned out that he actually bought the drug-induced thing, and then it worked for no good reason, just because this is an episode we're playing with the idea of faith and maybe God spoke to him or something. I don't know. Like when you get to the, I wrote this in my notes. When you get to the end and there's all this like maybe there is a higher power talk, I wrote down Mulder has cracked the code. He's Deadpool. He knows there's a writer.
Well, here,
and that the reason that things happen the way they happen, and that you can't explain anything, is that there really is somebody contriving it all behind the scenes.
I think
it's the only thing that makes sense now.
I think Mulder started out with the intent to try to test a hypothesis, but he was trying to be as convincing as possible to get her to administer these drugs. And then because he believed he wanted to test it enough, that's when he thinks it's working even when it's not
Brandon,
working.
I don't want to be mean when I say this, but I get what happens in the episode.
Right.
I don't remotely buy that.
No, but
that he would hallucinate to that degree on a placebo, I don't buy it.
Oh, well, I do buy that, though. That I've certainly read about stories of people that have had similar experiences or went way over on just a tiny bit of stuff that someone else wouldn't go way over on.
Sir, the truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. You can't just present it and then because you've read about that, me buy it. You see what I'm saying?
No, and I understand, but I'm saying that's why I buy it, personally. That, for me, it worked for me, and this episode, in the end, I think inside the construct of the episode, he wanted to believe it enough that it kind of came true for him. But there's this thing that does actually happen, and it's slightly escaping me the nature of this, but there's this thing called a shared hallucination, where two people can actually have the same, almost an identical hallucination and be totally freaked out about it. I think this would be a case of where you could apply that to kind of what's going on here, and it's kind of a shared hallucination.
Well, like I said, I'm so jarred by it because... Sorry, Steve. I'm so jarred by it because what he is saying seems really super far-fetched, and the way it's being delivered to us, it felt like it was supposed to be far-fetched. And then they just go on and do it. I just couldn't believe they went there.
Even Mulder was slightly skeptical, but he was trying to sell it, and that sold it for me, for him to even try it. And then because he kind of wanted to go there, I think it's a case where his mind created the thing in which he wanted to do.
Steve, did you buy that?
No, I didn't buy that at all. My issue with it, and just to go into the shared hallucination thing, okay, that's a thing, but shared hallucinations have to have at least a similar context, right? Like, Mulder can't be in a completely isolated situation that has nothing to do with this other guy, and they both have some kind of weird psychic link despite never actually seeing each other. It doesn't work that way. And then the other thing with that is, okay, fine, it's a placebo. It gives him a high. Like, there's an episode of Frasier where Niles thinks he takes drugs and he actually doesn't, but he still gets high off it, fine, whatever. It shouldn't actually give him an answer that he would have no way of knowing.
That was the thing
And if you can say maybe he saw the hotel name somewhere, fine, but then he's just making something up and there's no good reason for the plot to be convenient enough for him to work out in that way.
Well,
the guy was unconscious.
Right, but Mulder did see him. Well, but you gotta look at the... Okay,
but it can't be a shared hallucination if they...
No, I said that what I'm actually trying to say is escaping me, but that's the closest thing I can come up with. But if you look at the two storylines, this is where the two storylines converge. Look at what Scully's trying to do, and what Einstein, or what Scully and her counterpart are trying to do. And you notice the part where she talks about receiving brainwaves from a person that's unconscious, and she hadn't thought about it before. Well, the guy starts sending out brainwaves. And people can pick up on the strangest of things. Don't ask me how it happens, but people pick up on this. I'm saying I think they were trying to show that that Mulder is picking up on the thoughts of the guy who sent out his brainwaves, and that's why they showed us the brainwaves to begin with. I think that's where the connection is being made. Now, the episode didn't give it to us that clear cut. I think it was murky, but I think that's where the connection is between his brainwaves, and Mulder was there looking at him, trying to figure this out, and I think he just happened to pick up on the whatever it may be, under the influence of the placebo. It just happened to work. So, for me, as a single episode, you know, maybe not overall, maybe not in real life, maybe not. But as a single episode, it still worked for me, and I still enjoyed it. And as for at the very end, where he is, well, when he is having the vision there, I thought that the barge of the dead, if you will, or the dying, I thought that was a great visual. What would have been a drug-induced visual, and I thought that was a great visual, and it kind of reminded me of Mary holding Jesus, if you will.
That's obviously what they were doing with that.
Right, but at the very end, Mulder's trying to make sense of his vision after he understands that it was placebo-induced. He can't make sense of it, so the ending doesn't really make sense because he doesn't even make sense about it.
I just say that makes the episode nonsensical and not actually good, though.
Yeah,
like you can maybe explain it, but the episode would still ultimately just be nonsense. It's not really saying anything then.
The hallucination itself was really neat.
Yeah, David Duchovny when he's high and dancing is hilarious.
It's fun, yeah. I mean, and that's the kind of stuff, they did a lot of that kind of stuff in the show too. And big X-Files fans. There was a girl I went to high school with that I'm still really good friends with, who was a huge X-Files fan, and she had a friend that they always watched it together every week, and it was like their big ritual. And I never got to watch it with her because it was their ritual. Only they were allowed to watch it together. So there's this big thing for her. So I was watching that scene going, Lena is freaking out right now if she's watching this. But they put the lone gunman in there just real briefly, and there had been there was an article I read a few weeks ago that said that they were supposed to be in the show, and if that was their one appearance, it's really funny because there was all this fan speculation as to how they were going to bring them back because they were supposed to have died, and it makes me kind of wonder if and I guess we'll find out tomorrow with our last episode, but it makes me wonder if they won't appear in that episode, and if there wasn't some foreshadowing, Mulder seeing the future going on, because you've got them, and you've also got the Smoking Man, and it made me think that all of that was supposed to be like he's having a premonition that has more to do with the overarching mythology than just this episode. But I mean, I guess we'll see tomorrow. And I'm also sort of expecting that episode, Brandon, to bring back stuff from all of the one and dones and blend it all together.
I'm certainly hoping.
It may not go there, but I kind of think it might. We really need to move on. We've got 20 minutes and lots more things to talk about. Somebody asked us to talk about the end of Legends, and we would be remiss to do so, because as much as I enjoyed that episode, the big thing that I loved the most, of course, was the big cliffhanger, getting to the future and seeing the Green Arrow, who's not our Green Arrow, and they're in, what was it, Steve, like 2040?
2046, something like that?
Yeah, and somebody left a comment and said, "Oh, this is AMC Comics. I guess Felicity and Oliver don't get married, considering the building says smoke." It's a really good point you're making. Now, since this looks like it might be a post-apocalyptic future, although it could just be. It could just be Star City. Star City's always having problems. It may not necessarily.
It looks like this every single May. That's just how this universe
looks like. Yeah, that's just the next crack. That's the crackpot season 22 of Arrow. I'm sorry, what?
It's becoming Christmas in Doctor Who.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's possible that this is just the normal future, that actually tells us something about that. And honestly, do you really see Felicity and Oliver getting married and staying married through the rest of the series and beyond? No, me neither. So that didn't surprise me at all. But whether that's the actual future or not. But I'm really stoked for that episode. That looked like a lot of fun. And I don't always do this, but looking at the promo for next week and getting to see elderly Oliver Queen is going to be good stuff. It's going to be fun.
Yep, agreed. I can't wait to see how some of those dynamics play. And apparently we have Deathstroke next week, too. So
whoa, crazy echo. I don't think anybody could understand you, Steve.
Okay, I was just saying that next week I think we have Deathstroke, so it'll be fun to see those two characters hang out again after it's been so long.
Well, there was a mention of Deathstroke. I mean,
it seems like he was facing off against Deathstroke in some of the stills, but we saw him from behind, so I'm not sure.
But I guess the question is it going to be actual Deathstroke or just somebody else in that costume?
That's true. It could be like Amanda Waller, where they bring him back for one final appearance where Oliver kills him or something.
Yeah, well, and of course, we did the same thing with Deadshot, and then, we've had, apparently you can use anybody you want to in Earth 2.
Yeah.
Okay, Lo, do you have any good questions for us?
Let's see here. I've got a couple people asking what we thought of Lucifer. Nothing specific, but just we haven't really talked about it yet.
We can talk about that for a second.
What was this? Oh, what was this episode? But I remember it was the dating thing. I don't understand. Teaching people how to flirt, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Teaching men how to sleep with as many women as possible, which is definitely a thing. Not just that men do this, of course, but that I'm sure there are seminars about this. I bet
there's a huge book that came out a couple years ago that is that. Yeah. I think it's called The Art of the Game or something, or The Key. Something like, it's one of those two. One of them is not that, but one of them that I said is. And it's a huge best-selling book that tells you that it goes into the pseudoscience behind this, the debonair attitude, the suaveness, whatever.
I love that guy is not at all what he's pretending to be.
Oh, of course, absolutely. That was great.
Because most people are just,
they're snake oil salesmen.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, what's funny about it is, like even though he's slimy and stuff, I think a lot of people are just more human than being capable of doing that for any significant amount of time.
Well, he's selling a product too.
But my point is that you might be able to get away with for yourself and your conscience and sleeping okay at night with manipulating people that you'll meet once or never. But I mean, like. Yeah, people tend to build attachments, and they tend to find somebody they end up caring about and not being able to help that. And I thought that whole thing was cool. This was by the end, and they got me with the revelation that the girlfriend was actually was actually the culprit, and that she had kidnapped herself and all of that. I thought that was wonderful. But Steve, I don't know if you've ever seen this episode. By the end, there's a Smallville episode that does exactly this.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, there's an episode where this woman who slept with Lex Luthor, and Lex doesn't remember her and gives her a gift and kind of and never calls her back again and expects her just to move on and forget about him. There's an episode where she kidnaps him and tries to make him pay for it, and he doesn't even remember her face and that he had slept with her. It's the exact same thing.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
Except that this girl goes even farther and is more sadistic and actually dates the guy for 4 months and then does it, which I was like, oh man. I love that Lucifer sympathizes with him. I love that whole speech about how he's changed and
doesn't that mean anything?
Aren't you just as bad as he is? Like, what makes you any better? The way that you're deceiving this guy. And remember that he is all about making sure that the proper punishment happens, and that it's he has the eye for an eye mentality, but it's got to be the appropriate punishment. And we've got that here, again, and that was kind of fun.
I'd like to know how the police department. They must have been searching all over this brother's place, like looking for signs of his sister. How did she go under the radar for so long? That's kind of what I wanted to know.
Considering that they're in LA, I feel like just one missing person probably wouldn't be necessarily the case that gets the most focus. Especially considering we had so many celebrities dying and stuff like that in the previous episodes.
I have a couple of minor criticisms of this episode. One of them is no matter how organic you try to make it, a scene like that where a woman walks out of a room and accidentally drops a towel is always going to feel contrived.
Yes.
I've always said you can make anything work. I've never seen that work.
She drew her gun and her arms went up from the towel, which she was holding it around her, but I don't believe she didn't tuck it or something.
That just doesn't happen.
You cannot keep a towel wrapped like that, and walk for more than maybe 10 feet. Somebody who wraps a towel like that on a daily basis, it's not. If you don't have your arms down, it's there's no way she would have been able to hold a gun and expect that she was going to be able to do that and keep it up.
The reason it feels contrived, especially when it's a cop, though, is that cops are supposed to be like always really, really mindful of their surroundings and.
Oh yeah, no, I'm
like,
agreeing with you. I
all
think
I'm
it's
saying
silly
is,
that she even like used a towel.
I don't buy she would have forgotten she was not wearing clothes.
Yeah.
I don't get that. The other thing is, so far, from what we've seen just so far, and maybe it'll get better under a better director or whatever of an episode, but this show needs to stick to the cop stuff and the procedure and the banter and not try comic book action.
It looks really bad, yeah.
It looks really bad. Just don't do that. And it was worse for some reason when they kept stopping it to say things and then started again. Like we think that bit of the scene is over and then they started again. Like we're gonna be like, oh cool, more fight. I'm like, no, make it stop. Like, poor man's Blade, man. Like it was rough and hilarious. And I felt a little bit bad for Woodside. Like it was Steve. It was like it looked like QuickTime events.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Like I was ready to hit the square and then the X and then the circle. Like.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. There's that Buffy episode, Lies My Parents Told Me, where Spike and Robin Wood, DB Woodside, have that fantastic fight where they do stop and talk in the middle of it, and it's embarrassingly better than this fight.
And it's the same actor.
Yeah.
I don't know about with regards to the source material. Okay, they talk about in this episode. They talk about changes within Lucifer, but I'm not buying under any circumstance, whether it be fantastical like this is or just otherworldly, that him coming around to humans is changing him to where he starts to have blood running through him.
Well, we just don't know what's caused that.
I don't know what's causing that yet, but I have a feeling they're going to go there, and I don't know how the original material handles it, but if they do that, I'm still not going to buy it. So. Well,
yeah, but I hear what you're saying. Now that I didn't even think of that. That actually could be really interesting, though. If it's the fact that he's becoming more human, because the thing is, you're talking about you're not talking about a science fiction world. You're talking about like faith mythology, and you can do anything with that as long as you're consistent. So it could be that that they have, it's set in their rules of their faith mythology that if that were to happen, then he starts to turn human. I don't think they'll do that. I think it'll be more concrete than that. But even if they do, Brandon, why is it a problem? Like it could just be in the rules of their. If they made it vague and they didn't explain it to you, yes. But like so much of biblical mythology, when we do these kinds of heightened occult things, have really weird arbitrary rules, and we usually talk about the arbitrary nature of God and stuff when we do that, which the show has already touched on.
That might be, and I was coming from your same direction, but the reason that it still won't work for me, even if that's built into the rules, is for the same reason that I couldn't stand sparkling vampires in Twilight. It doesn't work with all of the rest of the rules that are already out there.
I don't know how that's the same thing, though, because...
I don't either.
Yeah, because
if you're just going to arbitrarily decide that's what your vampires do, or you're going to arbitrarily decide that because in your universe that a demon is going to become more human because he's sympathizing with more humans, and again, they haven't said that or not.
Okay, but for one, they haven't explained it, and even if you go to the legitimate sources of this, even if you go to biblical context, there is no biology of angels. For all we know, they do bleed and work like human beings. They just don't. They just have more power. I don't know how that's anywhere near the same thing as Twilight.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is. I don't feel like demons have like a set rule book. Like if we were to say what are vampires?
Yeah, demons are different in every single occult thing you read. Like Lord of the Rings to Hellblazer to Lucifer to Sandman. Half of those things are in the same canon. They work differently.
Yeah, the reason and Brandon also, I know it sounds like there's three of us ganging up on you, but you're just wrong. The problem is when we're talking about the sparkly vampire thing like that, is that there are a million different vampire mythologies that are all very, very different, and like there's not one right way to do that. The reason people hate the sparkly vampire thing is because people think vampires are supposed to be scary and it took their teeth away.
Well,
that's why people hate. It's not. Oh God, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Like there's so many different vampire mythologies. I read a book once. I forget the name of this. That was it came out like 10 years ago. That was a vampire mythology that was rooted entirely. It's sort of like when you do zombies as a virus. It was rooted entirely in science fiction, and vampires were a biological disease you could contract. I mean, like there's a bazillion ways to do these things.
That's Morbius and Spider-Man, right? Like a science fiction vampire.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
it's like what standards would you be holding it to exactly? Like most of the
Christianity.
Okay, but the problem with that is what then? Catholicism, because most of your and even that varies depending on the church. Like most of the angel vampire lore we have ain't biblical.
Well, okay.
And I mean, also a lot of that lore doesn't define the biology of the angel, though, right? Like it defines their place and their moaning, but I don't know how that connects to them bleeding.
But this is the biblical style of what they're like. The Christianity demons and Christianity's God. It kind of all feeds into that, but we don't usually have like God can make you mortal. God can take away.
How do you know he didn't?
We don't know. I'm just saying is that if it's the way I think they're going, that's why I have a major problem with it.
But it could be part of the set of rules that we don't have. This would be uncharted territory. It would be you've never had one go to Earth like this.
Right, and I'm disagreeing with the rules. If that's the rule that they've made, I'm not buying it. That's all I'm saying is that's why I'm not buying it is because for how I grew up, there's nothing that says this would be how this works. So I'm waiting to see, but I still didn't like it.
We're going to need to move on. We're getting questions about Rebels. I didn't get a chance to watch it this week because the website I usually go to didn't have it, and I couldn't find it, so I just haven't watched it yet. Steve, did you happen to watch it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll mention a question somebody had about it because we haven't brought up nearly enough audience questions tonight, and then feel free to talk about that for just a minute. We've got about 10 minutes left, and we haven't gotten to what have we talked about yet? We haven't talked about Arrow. We haven't talked about Agent Carter. And we haven't talked at all about Carter besides what I said earlier. Not getting many questions about that, though, so if we don't get to that, I guess it's not a big deal, even though there were 2 episodes this week, and I thought they were wonderful. Matt Sci-Fi Fan, do you think the rift between Hera and her father goes beyond just disagreeing with each other's methods?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of what's interesting is we know so little about Hera, and we know so much about her dad because he was in 2 episodes of Clone Wars, and he was a pretty major character in Lords of the Sith. And they do a pretty great job of discussing what kind of a father he is, what kind of a leader he is, what kind of mentality he has in that book. And so a lot of the rift that we see between them in this episode, they focus on mostly like the way he's doing things, but if you know that character and you know the stuff in the new EU, there's a lot more to it than that. And he's got a lot more of a fractured relationship with her than the show's even letting on. And so I think all that's ultimately interesting, and that's part of why I like this episode as much as I do. Is it does the thing I think a lot of good Star Wars material should do, which is it gives you a good solid story, a good solid character arc, but it leaves so many open areas to where anyone can jump into the expanded universe, just focusing on one character and be completely satisfied with it. Like they do a really good job of translating this character to this series and keeping intact everything they did with him in the past, and it really feels like a real progress.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about regarding that particular episode, Steve? Because, like I said, the rest of us got to it.
Not really. It was a good episode. I liked it a lot.
Okay, cool. Low, folks are, and again, I'm not getting any direct questions. Folks are asking you to talk about Walking Dead, so I'll scan around and see if there's any, thing else actually specific about that. But go ahead and give us a little bit about that.
I thought it was an awesome episode. The end before the winter break left us with quite a few questions. The characters were all in a very tight spot, like in various different places, and it was cool to catch up with them. There's a couple things that happened from the comics that were really fun to see. I don't, should I be spoilery? I guess I should. I feel like since you guys don't watch the show, I feel like I have to guard myself. But Carl finally is going to be like with an eye patch, which is super cool. just because that's kind of an iconic visual representation of the comics. I am really glad to see that family, whose names I forget, are finally dead, because I kind of hated the son, and the wife just was dumb. So, so I like that we're kind of seeing everybody band together. The fact that everybody came out of their houses to stand with Rick and company against all those zombies was just goosebumps. I loved it. Seeing everybody band together and finally see Rick's group and the Alexandrians come together was, I think, a long time coming, and honestly should have happened earlier. It was getting a little old watching them all argue with each other about which group they were with. So it's cool. I'm excited to see where things go. I can't wait to see what happens with Carl and his current predicament of not having an eyeball. So that'll be fun to watch.
Somebody in the comments, hope you don't mind this spoil, said that there's a time jump, and so in tonight's episode he just has an eye patch.
I'm okay with that. I mean, I read the comics, so I kind of, like, I know where things are going. So, but I would have liked to have seen him sort of waking up from it, but I guess we'll see once I watch tonight's episode.
Lo, did Jeffrey Dean Morgan show up yet or no? Because I was excited to see him cast in the show.
No, yeah, he's been cast, but he has not shown up yet. We've seen some characters that are involved with his character, and we'll see. So, like, we've heard his character's name, but we haven't actually seen him yet.
Okay, because I'm 2 seasons behind, and if he shows up and he's awesome, I'm going to catch up and start watching it again.
Well, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is awesome in everything, so I'm sure it'll be great.
Exactly.
Oh Man Daniel says that he's not supposed to show up until the season finale.
That'd be a good point to bring him in. He's a cool. I mean, he's a scary character, but he's a cool character. So it'll be cool to see how they do him in the show.
Bryn Davis says, I can't wait for Negan's arrival in The Walking Dead so we can really delve into the origins of society and civilizations with the Brave New World arc.
Negan is his character's name. That's the character that Jeffrey Dean Morgan is playing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I probably said this before. I've got the compendium, which is like the first, or one of them, which is like the first 54 issues, and I should read that at some point. Somebody gave me that a long time ago, and I've never gotten it. I could read 54 issues of that series, and I've not done it yet.
It's a good series.
Okay, Steve, let's tackle a little bit of Arrow, shall we?
Yeah, sounds good.
I guess we'll start with a couple of questions here. Ren Davis, or things people want us to mention specifically. We have to talk about the hand-waving of Felicity's paralysis in Arrow. Once again, they completely rush through a storyline and don't mine any material from her paralysis. What a waste. And somehow or rather, and I'm not like saying, hey, look how cool I am. I don't know why this happened. Halfway through the episode, I knew that was going to happen. I can't tell you why. I've got like no evidence or anything, but like somehow or rather, it's just the show has gotten this predictable. I was like, she's going to have the spine thingy from Birds of Prey at the end of this episode. And wouldn't you know it, she did.
Yeah, I mean, I had the exact same thought. It's weird because I'm okay with them hand-waving it, mostly because I know if they try to do anything more with the paralysis, it's probably not going to work. I am more okay with them telling bare-bones, very shallow stories than trying to be deep and coming off as offensive, because they've done that before. And they do that a little bit in this episode as well. So I'm okay with it just out of mercy.
Yeah, it just makes you wish that they hadn't gone there in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Kinda. This episode is really weird because it feels like you have two different writers writing specifically two different characters. Somebody came in and made Donna 3 times more annoying than she's ever been before. I didn't think that was possible. I hate that character. This time I wanted to put a paper bag over my face and scream every time she was on screen. And trying to do relationship drama with her and Lance, like A, they've been on screen enough for me to even care, and B, that like I would care even if they had done that, and then like to have them patch it up at the end, like this is a couple that I've been really. Is there anybody watching the show? Anybody that's like rooting for those two to get together and like really likes that? Is there anybody? somebody came in and wrote that irritating, obvious, I'm going to call it drivel. I really hated that. Somebody came in and wrote that. Somebody else came in and made Thea like the most reasonable, likable character ever. What is going on? There's like two different shows at the same time. Her speech to Oliver about how sometimes you have to tell lies to protect people, and a lie isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes that has to happen, and just the sobriety of all of that made me like really love where we are with Oliver right now in the season, because he has by and large remained pretty consistent, except for stuff with Malcolm, but that's always going to be a problem now. But they made me come back and love that again, and his running for mayor and all that stuff, and they made me dislike Felicity even more than I have been because of the way she reacted to the same news in the alternate time that ruined their relationship that they've been fixed with time travel. Oh my goodness, what is going on? Steve, did you have the same perplexities that I'm having?
Yep, we talked a little bit about it on Facebook when we were talking about Legends. Yeah, it's the exact same issue where Thea is surprisingly great. I love that speech. I love that scene, mostly because it makes that dumb drama contrivance actually have more layers to it. Like, it's still really predictable that Dark would just take his kid and that he has a kid and he's keeping it secret and all that stuff. But I can respect Oliver's decision, the moral dilemma he's stuck in. It feels like a genuine, hard decision to make. It's handled really well.
There's no way.
Yeah, it's really fair to every side also. I loved all that about it. And then you get to Donna and Lance and Felicity. And it's just nonsense. And there's that one particular line where Felicity's mom walks out crying, and then Felicity walks in saying, "What did you do?" And he says, "Why did it have to be me that did something?" And Felicity's like, "Because you're a man." I'm like, no. That's not how that works. That's awful, and that just makes her come off as being really, really dumb 70s sitcom-y. It's really, really bad, and it's even more annoying because Felicity used to be a really great, strong, interesting female character that had lots of interesting nuances and had a fun dynamic and was very unique, and now she's just generic and angry about everything. And it never comes from a natural place, and it just feels like the writers are trying to insult the audience at times, making us care about things that we know doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that stuff gets really pandery. Omar Danielson said just before you said that, "Oh, I hated Felicity's because you're a man" line. Like, we're not the only ones. That was nuts. I couldn't even believe that, especially because it felt obligatory and almost like she felt like she had to, like she had some sort of responsibility to her mother to be like that, because by the end, she was really rooting for them to get back together, and she was, I don't want to say fair to Lance because she did all that, and that was awful, but I mean, like, it was almost like it was some sort of like daughter quota filling thing where it's like, you're supposed to be on my side because you're my daughter, so she's got to throw him under the bus like that. And then make it a gender thing. That was just preposterous.
And I mean, out of 3.5 seasons, when has this show ever dived anywhere near gender identity and those kinds of social issues? Never. They just kind of randomly bring them up when they want more cheap drama or a bad joke.
Yeah, and like you said, it's really insulting. We don't have a lot of time left. I want to mention somebody else. I'm bringing this up because somebody else mentioned it, and I don't know if I can find it right away. But somebody Mind the Gap thinks they're setting Lance up to die. That's fair.
Probably hasn't done anything in a long time.
I thought he and Diggle both have kind of marks on their backs for me right now. But then, I still think it's probably William in that grave, so they're probably using both as red herrings, and they're not going to let anybody die until they make a big giant promo deal out of it. Someone dies, and it'd be next year, because that's when Smallville did it, season 5. Somebody died. In their 100th episode, somebody's going to die. Mark my words, friends. In Arrow's 100th episode, or they already had 100. Maybe they've already had 100.
I think they have, I think they're close to 100, but I don't think they had 100 yet.
In their 100th episode, somebody died.
100 usually happens during the 5th season of a show.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. That's what happened to Smallville in their 100th episode. Somebody. Anyway, so somebody brought up the thing that drove me nuts about Dark, and I've been saying this all season. How in the world is Arrow a threat to this guy? And this episode, he does the Empire Vader thing where over a monitor, he force chokes somebody and kills him. How is Oliver a threat to this guy? He could kill anyone at any time. He could go on television and kill everyone. Well, as long as he can see the other side of it, I guess. Maybe he doesn't even have to do that. I don't know how his powers work. There's no talk about it. He's magic. He can do anything he wants to. How is this not a Flash villain? I mean, I don't know that Flash would be able to beat him either, but he'd have a better shot than... And then this is not the time to close down the League of Assassins, I'm just saying. Right? Because, like, Dark worked with them, and also they know more about mystical stuff than anybody, and how is John Constantine not a regular on this show right now? He's the only person that has a shot. You need to bring Zatanna in, and you need him, and you basically need Justice League Dark right now. That's the only way to beat Dark. Justice League Dark needs to beat Damien Dark. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, everything with Damien Dark, it brings all the same plot problems that we had with stuff like with Ra's al Ghul beforehand, and I don't understand half of what's going on with this plan. Like, we're more than halfway through this season, and I still don't know what the hell he's doing.
I like this comment. Red Letter Antilles says, Cap, they will, like Smallville, kill off the dad, so Arrow will bring back Robert just to kill him. Yep, because they bring back everybody in the show. Okay, we are really running out of time. We haven't had a chance to talk much about Carter. Steve, do you want to weigh in on that?
I don't really have a lot to say other than I really enjoyed both episodes. I love the stuff with the three-way dynamic between Dottie, Carter, and Madame Mask, and I love how they're utilizing that character. She hasn't done a lot in the comics. The initial stuff with her in Iron Man in the 80s was pretty good, and then some of the stuff we got later under Fraction and was pretty good, but she's by and large not utilized very well or very often. Like, she's one of those villains that you forget even exists, like Hugo Strange, where every time she shows up she dies, or something like that, or like she just disappears for like 10 years at a time. So reinventing her and making her this interesting, I was pleasantly surprised by.
You were mentioning earlier about how Jarvis has been very slapstick recently, and I know that this is kind of in that vein, but the moment when they're like, Jarvis, can you find Dottie? Like, where is she? And he goes, I'm frantically searching for her right now and talking to my glasses like a madman. And I don't know why, but that line made me laugh so much.
I laughed too. That was great.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
Oh, so funny.
I was watching Kingsman just a day beforehand, so the whole glasses communicator thing just played more.
Yes. Yeah, good episodes.
Some of the banter, even when it's not like laugh out loud funny, is really great too. I was really surprised that we were doing as much with Dottie as we were, even though, we definitely set that up at the beginning of the season, so I guess I should have expected it. And I also expected, once we went back to her, that we'd get a big supervillain team-up, and I love that they subverted the expectations for that, right? Where she's just, Madame Mask has this very survival of the fittest mentality, and she uses everybody as pawns, so she's got the same thing with Dottie, even though she's like the most skilled person that she's working with. But I really liked the banter. 6 walls, 6. We're in a cube, Peggy, trying to keep up. That was great. Anybody else wondering how when Wilkes becomes solid again and he's in his container thing, how he goes to the bathroom? I'm just saying. Is this the expression I had?
That's a good question.
Well, did we at least kind of touch on everything? I think we did.
I think so.
Okay. I've got one more thing I wanted to mention, because we got kind of bogged down on some stuff earlier with X-Files. There's one more thing I wanted to mention about that, and that is, as much as I didn't think a lot about that script worked as far as the plotting, a lot of the dialogue was really fun, and the characterizations of the younger counterparts were really solid. like I was impressed that they didn't seem straight up Mulder and Scully. Like you could definitely compare contrast Scully with Einstein and get two different characters. She's a lot more snarky than Scully, and she seems kind of full of herself. And they're both really wet behind the ears and haven't had a lot of experience yet. I'm gonna go as far to say, because if they had brought them in earlier, and especially if this were a full season and there was any talk about more, everybody would immediately expect a passing of the torch and a spinoff, and I think they could handle it. We didn't even talk, Steve, about the fact that that's Robbie Amell. I thought it was really cool they brought him in, and we got to see some acting chops from him that we didn't see as much in Flash, and I liked him in Flash playing Ronnie Raymond doing Firestorm. But in X-Files, he got a little bit more to do, and he got to do some actual dramatic acting, and he's good. He could carry a series, I think. And he clearly, and he's had a lot of experience being a character actor. I think just like Stephen Amell. In fact, I think he's more qualified to carry his own show than Stephen Amell was when he got a show.
No, I agree. That was one thing I wanted to mention earlier as well. I could totally see another X-Files show that's just those two characters with Robbie Amell. And I forget who the actress is, but the girl who plays Einstein.
I'd love it. I think they had a wonderful dynamic. And are you impressed that their dynamic was as good as it was, since they don't get all that much screen time together?
Yeah, and when they do, it really counts. Like, they have the one big entrance together, and they have one big closing at the end. And it feels like they've really grown, and Robbie Amell's character feels like he's a lot more timid than Mulder was. And it's nice that Einstein is really snarky and full of herself, but she's able to read Robbie Amell's character really well. It looks like they actually have a really good sympathetic connection with each other, and I would love to see more of that developed in a whole show.
Yeah, almost like they've been in a whole season of a show that we haven't been watching that just doesn't have anything to do with anything supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, you could make it X-Files Season 10 done right, where you concentrate on other characters and make it interesting.
It seems to me, speaking of this, it seems to me that the way she's handling how he wants to go talk to Mulder and Scully, and the way that she analyzes Scully, why is she working with this guy? There must be a love connection, yada, yada, yada. It seems to me that he's probably had these pings of, I wonder if this is really, if there really is something to what they do in the X-Files, and he's just now coming out saying, we need to get to this guy, let's talk to him now, but I've thought about this before, but now I feel like I'm finally going to say something to my partner, and she's not having it.
Perhaps so.
That's silence.
All right, well, I think that's going to be it for us tonight, folks. Thanks a lot for watching, and I know this is kind of a weird show with a smaller crew and no chat moderator, but we did our best and got through. And me at half impulse right now, honestly. I'm still getting over a head cold and stuff. So anyway, thanks for being with us, and I hope you had a good time. And we will see you again next week for more Primetime Crisis Live, hopefully with a thicker crew and thicker, like more of us, not
I'm
like
going to get really fat
in the head. But anyway, thanks again for watching. We sure appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and get going, and I hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your evening. I was Captain Logan. This was The Curious Low.
Hi, everybody.
The most horrifying of the Steve Baxis.
See everyone.
Brandon Grimm.
Hi.
Oh, and you know what? I just remember I didn't actually mention how the poll went.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I almost asked you about that earlier, and then I got distracted.
Real quick. Real quick. Okay, Arrow won. We're done.
Okay.
Arrow got 38% of the poll, or of the vote. Legends of Tomorrow, 33%. Flash, 8%. X-Files, 2%. iZombie, 6%. We didn't get to talk much about that either. That was a wonderful episode. Agent Carter, 5%. Lucifer, 3%. Walking Dead, 4%. And Star Wars Rebels, 2%. So people are still messing with us. And that's just fine. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Hope you had a good time. I am Captain Logan saying good night. Good night.